And now here's the tough problem. Here's the A-level problem. How much is left over? Now that you're here, realize that you now know this number. This number is 1.28. As soon as you find out the limiting reagent, you're going to want to write that number down here. You now know that. 5 grams of this plus 7 grams of that is going to produce 1.28 grams of this. Boom, you've got it. And guess what? And you're going to use all of this up. You're not going to have any of this left over. And you know you're going to have some of this left over when you make 1.28. The question on the table is now, how much of this are you going to have left over? And that's what we're getting here. That's the amount of material in excess problem. Okay, how do you do that? The punchline is this. You're going to take this number, which you now know, and you're going to calculate this number, which you don't know. You don't know how much you actually used. What you're interested in is how much you actually used. That's how much you what? That's not how much you used. That's how much you started with. Well, that is really ugly writing with a mouse. Okay, so take a wild hairy guess how we're going to figure out what the excess is. We're going to figure out how much we start with. We're going to subtract how much was used, how much we consumed. Yes, this makes total sense. And if you figure out how much you start with, subtract how much you use, guess what you have here? You got how much is left over. Okay, so that's just really common sense. Yeah, if you got 12 slices of bread, if you start out with 12 slices of bread and you use 10 of them, you're going to have 2 left over. Let me let the wheel, right. So, in this particular case, let's look at this. 5 sandwiches, 5 meats. How much could you make? 5 sandwiches. Then you do backwards. So 5 sandwiches is going to require how much bread? See, you now know the answer is 5 sandwiches. So now you need to know how much bread. You would do this for 5 sandwiches. How much bread is required to make 5 sandwiches? You would do the dimensional analysis and get what you would come up with. You would come up with what? 10 when you back calculated. So how much bread do you have left over? You start out with 12, you use 10, you've got 2 left over. I know you could do that in your head. That's why this is a good illustration. But for the ones you can't do in your head, here's how you would work it out. Ask yourself the question, how much of the excess reagent, manganese oxide, will react with the given amount of limiting reagent? 7 grams, I go from grams of sulfuric acid to moles of sulfuric acid, and then from moles of sulfuric acid to moles of mang oxide, and from moles of manganese dioxide to grams of manganese dioxide. So let me show you over here what we did. From grams of this to moles of this, from moles of this to moles of that, from moles of that to grams of that to get in that box. Same thing you're supposed to know how to do, and we've done 100 times now. So what do we calculate? When I do that, I get 3.10. So in here is 3.10. That's what's in the box. That's how much was used. Okay, so how much is left over? I started with 5. I used 3.10. So how much is left over? 1.9 grams was left over. In other words, that the amount of excess material is 1.9 grams. So to kind of pull it all together, I mixed all these together. All of this was consumed. I made 1.28 grams of this. And of this manganese dioxide, if I analyze my mixture, I would see that I had still unreacted 1.9 grams. And that's how you do a limiting reagent problem. Yes. Questions on limiting reagent. I would practice with this one, practice with some other ones, but realize easy, just a little bit harder, and harder. The other thing that I would remember here is limiting reagent is just a regular stoichiometry problem done twice, and the excess leftover is just a stoichiometry done 3 times. Yeah, it's the same thing. You do it once for one reagent, do it twice for the other, and then whichever one is limiting, you back calculate the amount used, and that's your third calculation. So you can see all 3 calculations that we did here to get the excess.